Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the side event of the 14th International Greenhouse Gas Conference, hosted by the Greenhouse Gas Inventory and Research Center of the Korean Ministry of Environment. My name is Kim Kyung-mi, and it is my great honor to be your MC for today. 여러분 안녕하세요. Thank you very much for You're welcome. Now we'll begin the side event, and it will be the panel discussion with our distinguished panelists. The focus of this session is on enhancing technical capacity of developing countries, challenges and opportunities with a focus on national GHG inventories. At first, I would like to welcome our moderator, Mr. Gonzalo Gafejero from Bordela-Dashi, a sustainable Ladakh, now who has 24 years of experience working in the field of climate change, including mitigation, adaptation, transparency, and climate finance. So without further ado, let's welcome him to the stage.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this side event that, as was just mentioned, is dedicated to enhancing technical capacity of developing countries, identifying the challenges and the opportunities with a focus on greenhouse gas inventories. My name is Gonzalo Cavalheiro, and indeed I have been working on climate change for more than 24 years already, and in this time, you might imagine that I've participated in events such as this one for quite a few times. And when I first got this very nice invitation from GIR and from PATPAT to be here, I started reflecting what else is new that needs to be discussed after 20 or 30 years discussing enhancing capacity, addressing challenges and barriers, not only in developing countries, but also in developed countries, which have been working on their greenhouse gas inventories also for 25 to 30 years. But in fact, as I looked into the presentations that our colleagues are going to share with us, I realized that indeed there is still a lot to be discussed. And the fact that countries have had experience for the last 20 or 30 years doesn't mean that we were able to share this knowledge and this experience with everyone else. And many of the challenges that people and countries and each one of us are facing today in developing their greenhouse gases inventories and their biannual update reports and their national communications, and as people are getting ready for their biannual transparency reports, these barriers and challenges are similar, but they're also very different. Each country is a very specific set of circumstances which are not repeatable anywhere across time or across the world. Nonetheless, there is still a lot that we can learn from each other, and sometimes we can learn a little bit from this country and a little bit from this other country. And indeed, the key recommendation that I would give to all of you participating here today is that you will not be able to fix all your barriers and challenges and problems today, but if you manage to find one little hint of how one colleague of yours has solved a specific problem or has addressed a specific barrier, then take that one with you home, share it with your colleagues at home, and then work on it. Don't try to take it all, but at least take something. So we are going to be together for about 90 minutes this morning. And immediately after these introductory remarks from myself, we will hear from Oscar Zarzo, the director of the PATPAT Secretariat. And then we are going to hear from 6 panelists which were participating in this training that is finishing today. And we are going to hear from them on their experiences, the status of their country's greenhouse gas inventories, and on how they are addressing barriers and identifying opportunities to move forward. In that panel, which I will introduce in a few minutes, you will have the opportunity to introduce questions, general questions, or specific to each of the presenters. And I would definitely encourage you to actively engage with them, because indeed it's a very rare opportunity to have a room full of so many knowledgeable experts from all over the world. And so do take advantage of these opportunity. And then once these questions and comments and this discussion is concluded, we will close our side event for the morning. And now, without further ado, I would like to introduce some congratulatory remarks from Oscar Zarzo, which cannot be here with us today, and so he is addressing us via a video.
Dear colleagues, it is a pleasure for me today to welcome you all at this side event on enhancing technical capacity of developing countries and the related challenges and opportunities on national greenhouse gas inventories. My name is Oscar Zarzo, and I am the head of the Secretariat of the Partnership on Transparency in the Paris Agreement. The partnership is a joint initiative of Germany, the Republic of Korea, and South Africa, and has been supporting capacity development and peer exchange in the field of transparency since it was launched in 2010. I would like to extend my sincere gratitude to our colleagues at the Greenhouse Gas Inventory and Research Center of Korea, GIR, for organizing this event in the sidelines of the International Greenhouse Gas Conference. This is a great opportunity to bring together national experts from different countries to share own experiences and learn on how to improve greenhouse gas inventories and implement national mitigation targets. Such dialogues are very important for sharing country experiences on the compilation of greenhouse gas inventories and learning on how to address certain challenges that may arise from collecting sectoral data, engaging relevant ministries, and ensuring the quality and reliability of the reports. As many countries are transitioning to the enhanced transparency framework under the Paris Agreement and will start preparing their first biannual transparency reports soon, such exchange of experiences will gain even more importance to promote bilateral and multilateral learning of good practices in enhancing national policy and institutional frameworks for the new enhanced transparency framework, improving the quality of greenhouse gas inventories and thereby contributing to the monitoring of the implementation and achievement of NDCs and long-term strategies. At the Secretariat of the Partnership on Transparency in the Paris Agreement, we are supporting countries globally in strengthening their MRV and transparency systems through international and regional dialogues, capacity development, and targeted in-country support. Together with GIR, we are closely working on expanding the opportunities for countries to access more capacity development support and access most updated knowledge and information. We are regularly publishing various knowledge products to provide access to most recent tools, methodologies, and approaches to reporting greenhouse gas emissions and mitigation actions. I hope that today's exchange via the panel discussions and inputs will generate useful insights and experiences that all the participants can take home, not only as inspirations, but also as a guidance and example to use and to work with. With that, I wish you most interesting discussions and learnings on how to bring forward the climate transparency action. Thank you.
Thank you, Oscar. It's a shame Oscar cannot be here because he's very well known of many of you and is also a very knowledgeable expert on transparency issues. But he is here in spirit with us, and I'll make sure to give him feedback of our discussions today. So as I mentioned, we are now going into a panel discussion on country experiences, and is indeed always a great privilege to be able to listen to experiences from different countries in a single location. I would like to ask to join me in the stage Subarna Musarraf from Bangladesh, Forrest Smart from Guyana, Pradeep Kumar from India, Evelyn Mel from Papua New Guinea, Rubidzai Munduru from South Africa, and Joseph Tamale from Uganda. Thank you for your availability to present your country experiences and your own personal experiences also today. You were challenged to, in 10 minutes, answer 3 guiding questions in your presentations. What is the current greenhouse gas emissions and removal status in your country? What are the barriers and challenges to the development of an inventory system and reporting transparent information on greenhouse gas emissions? And finally, what are the initial steps and supports or opportunity required to improve national capacity? Of course, I know each one of you, and please take a seat, each one of you will like to present your country as you do this and provide the national circumstances of your country, which is always very important to understand the specific challenges and barriers and opportunities that each country is facing. But please, as I was mentioning before, go as fast as possible to the core of your presentation because it's only 10 minutes and everyone is eager to really understand what are the main challenges, barriers, and opportunities that you are facing in submitting biannual update reports under the convention and preparing for your biannual transparency reports under the Paris Agreement. So without further ado, I would like to give the floor to Subarna. Subarna?
So, Assalamu alaikum all. Good morning. This is Subarna Musharraf from Bangladesh. And it's a great privilege for me to be here with all of the experts here. So, welcome to my presentation. I'm going to present my national GHG inventory of Bangladesh. Throughout the presentation, I'm going to discuss about institutional arrangement, national GHG inventory, mitigation actions, and constant gas and way forward. So, welcome to Bangladesh. Because for coming few minutes, we are going to discuss about our Bangladesh. So, Bangladesh is a country which is situated in the northern hemisphere with a 0.147 million of square kilometer of area. The total number of population is 165 million. So you can see the problem. Where is the problem? So I would like to say one more thing, that Bangladesh is one of the most vulnerable country due to climate change. And I would like to say that it's one of the innocent victim of the climate change, because we are contributing in the 0.47% to the global emission, and we are suffering so much. So these are some pictures from different sectors of Bangladesh. And as a non-Annex 1 party, Bangladesh is obliged to submit national communication and biennial update report. So as you can see, I put some structure here that how our institutional arrangement is done. So Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change from Bangladesh is responsible for submitting the national GHG inventory to the UNFCCC and also the focal point of UNFCCC. And Department of Environment as a technical arm of Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, they do the job of developing GHG inventory. So Department of Environment collect data from different government and non-government organizations, and they develop the inventory. So there are some key issues I would like to focus on. That there is no formal institutional setup or since we are doing the national GHG inventory from early 2000s, but still we do not have any formal institutional setup or no regulatory budgetary framework for our GHG inventory. And there is no legal framework or any laws, and there is the GHG inventory we are doing, that's only a project basis, and that's a part of the national communication. So strengthening institutional arrangement, currently we do not have any formal setup, but we are really working on it through a project financed by JEF, CBIT project. We are working on it, and with all of the stakeholders, we are trying to sign a MOU with BBS. BBS is the national statistical organization of our country. So far, Bangladesh has submitted 3 NCs, national communications, and in 2002, 2012, and 2018. So here you can see the emitting condition of our country. In 2023, we are going to submit our first BUR. So far, we haven't submitted anyone. So it's gonna be our first BUR, and it's almost it's finalized, and it's in the approving process. And as you know, in 2024, we all are obliged to submit our BTR. So I'm going to present my overall GHG inventory scenario from our emission scenario from the first BUR. So in the first BUR, we used 2006 IPCC guidelines and Tier 1. And there was a QA/QC to manage the quality of the data. We performed a QA/QC. We decided some QA/QC personnel, and we did some responsibilities for them. And they actually were totally engaged and involved to develop the GHG first BUR. And in 2000, our first BUR is incorporating data from 2013 to 2029. And in 2029, you can see we had 214 million ton carbon dioxide equivalent emission. And you can see energy is the highest contributing sector. Energy already, its contribution is 54%. Agriculture is almost 34%. Afolu sector is almost 34%. 10% from the waste sector, and almost 2% from the IPPU sector. So this is the removal scenario of our country. We only have removal from we have 3 sources of sink, where that is forest and remaining forest land, forest converted to forest land, and grassland remaining grassland. So from 2030, I just put some information from 2030 and 2039. The change in 2030, we had the emission of 173 million ton carbon dioxide equivalent emission, and in 2019, as I earlier mentioned, it's 214, almost 23%. We can see that hike almost 3%, 23%. So here is the sector-wise contribution each year, and that is the sector-wise GHG trend. So mitigation target. About mitigation target, our first INDC. in 2015, where business as usual scenario, from this business as usual scenario, we decided to remove 5% of GHG emission, and with conditionals, it would be 15%. And we submitted our NDC, National Determined Contributions, in 2021, where we business as usual scenario increased up to 6.73%, and conditional scenario was 15.12%. Mitigation actions in Bangladesh. Here are some actions which is not so significant yet, but we are trying. So mitigation policies, we have some policies, some long-term policies, some mid-term policies, some rules and regulations. But one thing I would like to share, that we do not have any specific policy or regulations for climate change or GHG inventory. National Energy System. Under the CVAT project I earlier mentioned, we are trying to we set up a national MRV system, and this is in progress. It is the platform. It's the online platform for the national MRV system, where all stakeholders are going to submit their informations, and we can extract our information from this online platform. And so far, we have drafted our first ETF. To achievement and progress, we do have some achievement and progress. Like we got some funded from, we got some fund from the different organizations. We implemented that, but if we want to say that how much did it impact in terms of reducing the GHG inventory, I do not really have that data right now, but we have some progress, and we are trying to get in there. So constraints and gaps. As a third world country, as a developing country, we always have some gaps in there. So I pointed 5 of them, like institutional arrangement is not in place, data generation gap, lack of coordination, lack of awareness, and lack of sector-specific fund. Needs and way forward. So as I earlier mentioned, we do not have any specific regulations for climate change. We have to go, we are trying to make an act on climate change where GHG inventory would be included. And so national implementation of NDC, and so far you can see public awareness, emphasis on renewable energy, and these are some needs we really will really help us to go forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Suparna, and thank you for racing towards the finish line. You do indeed have a timer there which helps you sticking to your time. Forrest, in case you don't have your key information on the top of your presentation, just do it, and then if you have the time, you can come back to introductory remarks about your country. So now I'd like to welcome Forrest Smart from Guyana to take the floor.
Pleasant morning to everyone. I'm really trying to learn the Korean language. I think it's Kansamida, I can't remember. Good day, everyone. I am here to bring to you as much as possible that I can deliver with regards to Guyana's experience with the GHG inventory. Guyana is located in South America, the only English-speaking country in that region, which gives us a unique opportunity. For what? We are yet to find out. Its size is just about 214 square kilometers with a population of roughly 813,000. So in perspective, with such a large land, with such small amount of people, we still have potential to grow. Majority of our population are located on the low coastal plain. We have basically 3 to 4 areas, which is the low coastal plain, hilly sand and clay belt, the highland region, and the interior savannas. Basically 2 wet and 2 dry seasons because of the ENSO scenarios, and that plays a great impact in terms of our emissions and what factors to take into consideration. Point to note, our main economic drivers currently are agriculture, mining. As of recent, we've just come into what we call the oil boom. So that should be a plus for us. National circumstances. Where are we today in terms of GHG? Well, of course, most of us signed on to the UNFCCC in 1992, and we've moved on from that to submitting our first communication in 2002. The Kyoto Protocol it was ratified in 2003, but just so you know, we even sent our first communication before the Kyoto Protocol. The second communication was done in 2012, and the Paris Agreement we ratified in 2016. Currently, we have completed our third contribution, but that was not submitted as yet. So we're hoping to do that sometime soon. Where are we currently? Our inventory preparation, we utilize the 2006 IPCC guidelines, and throughout the entire preparation of the entire inventory, we use between 1 to 2 tiers. Total emissions excluding the LULUCF, sorry for that E, don't know where it came from, is about 4,213 gigagrams of carbon dioxide equivalent, which is approximately 45% increase between 1990 to 2016. Quite a high number, which is equivalent to 1,497 gigagrams. There's a continuous increase of probably just about 1.8%, but that's rounded off because it's just about 1.86 or so. Our main emission sources are from domestic transport, enteric fermentation, agricultural soils, rice production, commercial institution, and the energy industry throughout. Main emission drivers currently are energy, agriculture, and waste. Tier 1 methodology is applied basically with regards to our energy sector. This is strictly because there is not much information, the lack of sufficient data, and an institutional capacity to garner that data as it is. The largest emission related are energy related, as we spoke, and that information comes from the GEA, which is the Guyana Energy Agency. We get information with regards to fossil fuel combustion, energy industries, which road transport are our main aspect with regards to the energy sector. The energy output contributes 55% of our total national emission as it is. And mind you, we're still growing in that energy department. The second is agriculture, which is the largest emitting sector apart from that of energy. It is 66% higher compared to the 1990 base. It accounts for 40% of our total national emission as it is currently. Our major aspects when it comes to agriculture are rice and sugarcane. These are basically the leading crops in our country and contributing 534 and 2,369 gigagrams respectively throughout. And that is expected to increase with our drive with regards to food security. Currently, we have a policy, overarching policy, the LCDS 2030, that speaks towards a shift to less carbon emitting fuels and in the longer term, hybrid vehicles. Hybrid vehicles currently are not on the horizon. That has changed to EVs, so it's still a plus. We speak towards the design of incentives to encourage the use of alternatives, basically with regards to price control within the country as it is. Mandatory installation of pollution removal devices, which regards to catalytic converters. It's in its early stage, so we're still looking to advance on that. Energy conservation in commercial, residential, and public buildings. This is growing tremendously since 2019, and most of our buildings, if not all of our public buildings, are fully equipped. The LULUCF generates annual net removals. There's basically no change in net sinks attributes from 1990 to current. And we have literally sequestered just about 46,968 gigograms. Overall, it creates Guyana to be a net sink. But then again, even though we're net sink, we're still not without our challenges. Gaps and constraints, controls that ensure the accuracy of the greenhouse gas data and information, QA and QC. That is paramount. We need to build our institutional capacity throughout in our current season. The need for the mechanism, which regards to capacity, not just the institutional capacity, but the capacity within these institutions as it is, because we need to understand that people need to garner knowledge to gather that data effectively. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Forrest, for making up some of the time. And just a point of clarification, do I understand correctly that Guyana has not submitted a BOR so far?
No.
Okay. We will discuss that in the discussion part. Thank you very much. So I would now like to give the floor to Pradeep Kumar from India. Pradeep, you have the floor.
So good morning, one and all. I am Dr. Pradeep from India. So I'm very happy to present my country's scenario in front of the experts here. So these are my contents. So the India's submission to the UNFCCC, preparation of BURs, national circumstance, institutional arrangements, GHG inventory, mitigations, MRVs, and capacity needs. So now when coming to the submissions to the UNFCCC, so India has submitted 2 national communications and 2 BURs, and we are 3 BURs, sorry, and we are actually planning to submit our 3rd national communications to UNFCCC very soon. So the preparation of BUR actually, it is the output of 72 studies. So there is various institutes actually involved, CS, Council of Scientific and Industrial Research, and various eminent institutes from India. So inputs from independent experts, government officials from 23 ministries. So the national circumstances. So India's per capita energy consumption is just 1/3 of the world's average. So the renewable power installed capacity has increased by 2.6 times from 35 gigawatts in 2014 to 90.39 gigawatts in 2020. So, and various forests and sustainable fisheries initiatives supports depend livelihood and reduce vulnerability. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the economy has got a very serious impact. So the institutional arrangements we have. So the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change is the mother ministry for the submission of national communications to the UNFCCC. And we have, sorry. So we have various line ministries here, and these are all the various institutions actually working for the various research capacities for the climate change actions. Yeah, GHG inventory in 2016. So the energy sector actually, the energy sector is contributing more in the share of the total GHG inventory of the country. And next to that one is agriculture, and next to that one is the IPPU, and the last one is the waste sector. So when coming to the gases, carbon dioxide emission is contributing 78.59%, and followed by methane and nitrous oxide. So this is the sector-wise national GHG inventories. So here you can, the energy sector is contributing much more here, and the waste sector is the band of the waste sector. You can see here the band of the waste sector is gradually increasing there. So it is showing that the waste sector is becoming one of the major problem to the India for the GHG inventory. Yeah, it clearly shows that it is a gradual increase. The waste sector, very peak increase here. So it is nearly 203% of increase in the GHG inventory. The top 15 key emission categories. So here I'm presenting that it comprises all the subcategories of the main main sectors. So the international comparison, so India's greenhouse gas emission is 2,531 million ton CO2 equivalent, and per capita emission is 1.96 tons carbon dioxide. So the observed climate changes, so it is most affected country due to the climate change, and the average increase in average temperature is 0.61 degrees Celsius per 100 years. So we are actually facing a lot of climate rainfall extreme events and a rise in sea level also. And India's cooperative regimes are we have launched the Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructures. So industry transition in hard to abate sectors initiated in 2019. So the mitigation actions, so energy sector here, you can see that the renewable energy capacity by target of achieving 450 gigawatts of renewable energy capacity by 2030, and in energy efficiency, so it is various schemes and programs as like I have mentioned in the energy efficiency like Ujala, SLNP, and PAT schemes. So the various schemes are actually working for the mitigation actions. So these are all the various ones for the sectors. So transport sectors and agricultural sector, we are actually working Pradhan Mantri Krishan Sinchan Yojana, and forest and tree cover, LULUCF sequestered 376 million tons of carbon dioxide, and waste modernization of sanitation facilities and waste management systems. Actually, we have the problem in the, domestic MRV arrangements here. The efforts distributed at multiple levels of governance, appropriate strategies for a large and divisional nations, and the important lessons for the new upcoming enhanced transfer regime. MRV is not the aim, it is complement the main aim of the climate change. The overemphasis of MRV and excessive details can distract attention from the development and climate actions. So the large dispersed system in developing countries are more expensive and challenged to measure the large and integrated system based on advanced technologies. So the capacity building needs, finance and technology requirement. So for NDC, India needs at least $206 billion US, and technology, India did not receive technology transfer in line with the current provisions under UNFCCC. So we are working on that, capacity buildings. Yes, of course, we required major areas for the capacity buildings include weather and climate forecasting and other services. So thank you.
Thank you, Pradeep. Quite controversial statement at the end, but we'll come to that also in the discussion regarding the emphasis on MRV at the national level. But thank you for keeping the time. I would now like to give the floor to Evelyn Mel from Papua New Guinea.
Good morning, Ogeta. That's good morning in Papua New Guinea. Today I will be presenting to you on the national GHG inventory we have in the country and the climate change's impacts that we have in the country as well. My presentation outline includes the country context, the climate change impacts that we have in the country, the HANSI and BOR submission progress that we have so far, the progress that PNG has made towards the ETF framework, and then the national GHG inventory status, and the mitigation targets and actions that we have for the country, and the institutional arrangements, and the support needed and received, and then the improvements that we have made so far, and of course the conclusion. So Papua New Guinea is one of the Pacific islands, and we are one of the largest islands in the Pacific, with a population of about 8.8 million. 12% of this population live in the urban cities, while 88% they live in rural communities. Our land mass is about 46.13 million acres of land. 97% of this land is Kashmir owned, which means that the indigenous people, they own the land, and then only 3% of this land is owned by the state, mainly the urban areas. And PNG, we are a diverse country in terms of culture and biodiversity as well. So we have like more than 7,000 different cultural groups with more than 800 different languages. And in terms of our economy, we have two sectors, the formal and the informal. And the formal sector includes large-scale minings and petroleum, and informal sector includes forestry, fishing, and subsistence agriculture, mainly from these 88% of population living in the rural community. So these are just some pictures of our different cultural groups that we have. These are some of the highlands in Papua New Guinea, and we have a active volcano that is happening in one of our provinces as well. And we have some of the forests, the biggest forest in probably the Southern Hemisphere. And then we have, these are some of the examples of when I say subsistence agriculture, this is a picture showing a typical subsistence agriculture that is being done by a family in a village. This old gardening you see is for one family only. And then they get the food from the garden and they sell it at the markets, and that's how they make their living. So in terms of climate change impacts in the country, as a small island developing nation, we have been impacted by a lot of changes and impacts due to climate change. And one of them is sea level rise. As you can see towards your left-hand side, sea level rise is one of the issues that our small island countries along the coast, cities and communities along the coastline, they're facing. And in the highlands, we have a lot of landslides and drought as well. So you can see towards your right-hand side, there are mothers standing in front of the garden with which the drought is destroyed. That is due to climate change. So in terms of our BOR and NC's submission, we have submitted our first NC in 2002. Our second national communication, we submitted that in 2014. And then we moved on to our BOR. And in 2019, we submitted our BOR1. And just recently, we were able to submit our BOR2. So the methodologies we used for the two national communications were the revised 1996 IPCC guidelines and Tier 1 method. For the BOR2, we used the 2006 IPCC guideline and Tier 1 methods. But for certain categories under LULUCF sector, we use the Tier 2 method. In terms of the progress that we have made to move into the enhanced transparency framework, we have the institutional arrangement that is in place and established, and we utilize that in the national greenhouse gas inventory and reporting so far. And our national MRV system for all the IPCC sectors has been developed. And as I've mentioned, we did submit our BOR1 and BOR2 already. And we also submitted our enhanced NDC. And also, we have submitted our enhanced NDC implementation plan and our roadmaps for the AFULU and the electric energy sector in 2021. we have prepared and submitted our national greenhouse gas inventory report to the UNFCCC in 2021 as well. So that's the progress that we have made so far in moving towards ETF. In terms of our GHG inventory status for the country, this is our latest inventory report as per our BOR2, and that's the 2017 results. So as you can see, we went from a net sink, that is with the LULUCF sector. So we went from a net sink to a net source, and then currently we are a net sink country. The trends are mainly due to, are just related to the LULUCF sector only, mainly from the deforestation and degradation activities in the country. So you may be asking, how did we drop from the peak down to net sink at the moment? Because in 2015, between 2010 to 2015, Papua New Guinea was known to export round logs. But when we realized that we were emitting a lot of greenhouse gas, the government put a ban on round logs. So when that happened, we managed to achieve a net sink. So our mitigation targets, in terms of our mitigation targets, we have submitted an enhanced NDC in 2020, as I've mentioned, and in that we outline our country mitigation commitments, especially under the AFULU and the energy sector. And of course, we have our policies and strategies to give strength to the mitigation targets that we have, and we have all these strategies and policies in place. And we are also developing a carbon market regulation, which I didn't put in here because it's in the drafting stage, because we see that there's a lot of interest in terms of carbon trading. So we are trying to develop a policy or framework to protect our resource owners. For our institutional arrangement, we have the UNFCCC Secretariat, and the focal point is the Climate Change and Development Authority, the organization I work for, and it's under the Ministry of Environment, Conservation, and Climate Change. And we have our sector leads, and then the data providers at the bottom. In terms of support that we need and we received so far, we do require a lot of support, even though we have progressed, but there's still always support that we need. And this includes like finance, technology, technical and capacity building needs that are still there. So we have estimated that about $1 billion will be needed over the 10 years period to achieve the targets that we have. And we have received support so far and 25 projects since 2017. The improvements that we've made, we have recently submitted our national greenhouse gas improvement plan, and we're working towards improve from the gaps that we have found and then enhance our current national GHG inventory we have in the country. To conclude, the government of Papua New Guinea, we welcome support from development partners to strengthen the current GHG inventory we have in the country, and we're always grateful for the support we have received so far. And I would like to thank the Korean government through GIHAR and UNFCCC for this training that we have attended. It was resourceful and useful, and I really thank the government of Korea for that and UNFCCC. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Evelyn, also for keeping the time. May I just ask you, because I couldn't understand, what did your government ban the export of to limit greenhouse gas emissions?
We did export round logs. So, round logs.
Oh,
logs.
Logs.
They
Right.
would so
Round logs. Okay.
Deforestation,
Okay, very
logging.
well. Got it.
So yeah.
Thank you very much. We're now giving the floor to Rumbidzai Munduru from South Africa.
Good morning, everyone. I'll be giving you the presentation for South Africa's National Greenhouse Gas Inventory. So this is what my presentation will consist of, and I'll get right into it. So if you're not aware, South Africa is at the southernmost tip of Africa, and we have a area of about 1.2 million square kilometers, with a coastline of more than 2,800 kilometers, and a population as of 2019 of about 59 million, and a GDP of about 386 billion US dollars. In terms of international cooperation, so far we've submitted 3 national communications as well as 4 BURs, and we are currently in the process of compiling our 4th national communication and our 5th BUR, and these will be based on our recently published 2000 to 2020 inventory. Moving on to our institutional arrangements. So we have the Department of Forestry, Fisheries and Environment, and this is the national focal point in the country, and that is responsible for all climate change related issues. Within that department, we have the GHG inventory unit, and that's where I work. And that unit is the one that is responsible for the compilation of the inventory. So we are a team of about 7, and so we do have at least 1 sector lead for each of the sectors to compile the inventory. So what helps us with the compilation of the inventory is we do get data from other line departments, but we also have the National Greenhouse Gas Emissions Reporting Regulations, and these help us to get data from certain companies within industry, and that's particularly useful for the IPPU sector because that's where we get most of our information. So those that meet the specific thresholds that are stipulated in these regulations, they are then required to submit information to us, and they do that through our South African Greenhouse Gas Emissions Reporting System that we call SAGES. That's just a screen grab of what the interface looks like. So the reason we mainly rely on this is because we currently don't have a Climate Change Act, but I'll talk about that in my last slide. So looking at the National Inventory Management System, all the data that we receive, whether it's through SAGES, our reporting program, or other sector departments, we house all of our information, our calculation files, archives, records for everything on our greenhouse gas inventory management system. And after we've compiled our greenhouse gas inventory, we draft our reports, and 2 of the key quality assurance measures that we take for that is the public commenting process, where we allow the general public, it could be an average person on the street or academic institutions, to provide input into the draft report, but we also have an independent review where we appoint an external service provider to do that process. So looking at our 2020 national inventory, overall we were a net source of about 442,000 kilotons. We have a very small, well not very small, but a slightly small sink of about 26,000 kilotons, and so that does assist us to reduce our emissions a little bit with each year. So still focusing on the 2020 inventory, these are just the sector contributions excluding FOLU. Our major contributors, the energy sector, which contributes about 81% of the total inventory. And of that 81%, 54% is mainly due to electricity production. Moving on to the contribution of gases, this basically follows the same trend as the sectors. The largest contributing gas is CO2 at about 82%, with 95% of those CO2 emissions again coming from energy. So for us, energy is quite a big sector. Looking at our trends since 2000, our sink has allowed us to reduce our emissions a bit throughout the years. But if we look at the change from 2000 to 2020, it's only been a 1% decrease, which doesn't seem like much. But if we compare that to 2009, which was our peak emissions, we've actually reduced our emissions by about 20%. And that's mainly due to the increase of our sink as a result of reduced fuel removals, as well as reduced biomass burning. And then a bit of a contribution from reduced emissions from IPPU, mainly due to reduced demand in metals, chemical, and the minerals industry. Moving on to our key categories, this is just the top 10, but we have about 30 major key categories, and 50% of those key categories belong to the energy sector. And I'll talk more about how we are dealing with this in the last slide. So in terms of our mitigation policies, as I mentioned, we don't have a Climate Change Act, but we do have two overarching mitigation policies at the moment. We've got the National Pollution Prevention Plans, and these have a wide sector coverage. They have emissions threshold eligibility, and so those who are eligible based on the emissions threshold are required to submit pollution prevention plans, as well as report on that annually and give us information on if they've deviated from their plan, how are they planning to remediate that and get back on track with their pollution prevention plans. The other one that we have is the Carbon Tax Act from 2019, also an overarching policy with a wide sector coverage, but this one has sector-specific thresholds for eligibility, and it basically applies the polluter pays principle. And so those that are eligible for carbon tax will have to pay carbon tax every year, and with each year, the rate of that carbon tax increases. But there are also incentives that allow good behavior in the industry. So those, for instance, who participate in carbon offset projects or sequestration can get a sort of a discount on the carbon tax rate. Now, looking at enhancing our national capacity. So as I mentioned, we don't have a climate change act in South Africa, but we do have a climate change bill that is currently in cabinet or in parliament, and we're hoping in the near future that they will pass that. But what we're hoping is when they do pass that law, it will help us to strengthen our institutional arrangements, because one of the issues that we do have is availability of data for all of our sectors. And so the Climate Change Act will help us to have the authority to get that data from certain industries and companies. And it will also help in terms of adding to our mitigation actions. So for instance, one of the mitigation actions that are proposed under the climate change bill is issuing carbon budgets to different companies that meet certain emissions thresholds, and also issuing sectoral emissions targets for line departments. So these two policies would be key in helping us to mitigate, but also get a lot of data to funnel through into our national inventory. We're also looking at enhancing capacity through the CBIT projects. We recently just started one now, and that one will actually really help us be more prepared in terms of the reporting requirements that are required under the ETF. And then we also want to continue developing country-specific emission factors. So at the moment, we have a project that just started now for solid fuels in our country. Last year, we finished one on liquid fuels. And this for us is very important because if you remember, energy is our largest contributing sector. And if you remember as well, with the key categories, 50% of our top key categories are belonging to the energy sector. And so we've received donor funding to assist with these projects. That's how we've been able to develop these emission factors. And that will really help us under the ETF to make sure that we move to reporting using higher tier methods for our key categories. Sorry. Another one is enhancing our greenhouse gas verification program. So as I mentioned, we have the reporting regulations that allow us to receive data from industry via our reporting system called SAGES. And so how we want to enhance the quality assurance for that data is to strengthen our greenhouse gas verification program, so have more stringent rules and procedures in place to quality control that data so that when we funnel it into the inventory, we're aware, for instance, of uncertainties related to that data, and we'll also ensure that the data is reliable and can be used for the inventory with huge confidence. We also want to improve on completeness. We currently don't report on all significant sectors, and that's related to the first point that I mentioned of having a lack of data. So having the climate change law, when it does get passed, will really assist us to make sure that we do end up reporting on all of our significant sectors. And then lastly, we currently don't include all of the precursor gases. So this is something that we also want to do, but I think this will definitely involve some studies which would require donor funding and projects to be done. But all in all, with South Africa, I think we've been improving steadily over the few years, and we've received a lot of help from donors in terms of projects, helping to assist with compilation of our national communications and BURs. So that has been very helpful to us. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Rumbizai. And last but certainly not least, Joseph Tamale from Uganda.
Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure for me to talk to you about Uganda's climate change response landscape. between 1990 and 2021. So briefly, my presentation is going to look at 9 aspects. That is the national circumstances, climate change vulnerability in Uganda, then the timeline of our response to climate change, and then the institutional arrangement for greenhouse gas inventory compilation, then look at emissions and removals by sector and gases, and then the trends, and then key category analysis, and then the climate change mitigation actions by the country, and then lastly, which challenges we are finding in our response to climate change. So briefly about my country, it's located in East Africa, and of course it's crossed by the equator, so we experience a tropical climate. And about land size, it's about 200,000 square kilometers. And about the population, we're about 45 million Ugandans as of the 2021 census. And of course, our population is growing at a rate of 3.2%. When we look at our economy, it's purely agro-based and currently stands at 40.53 billion as of 2021. One important thing to stress here is Uganda is the Pearl of Africa because it's gifted with natural resources ranging from pristine tropical forests to wildlife and beautiful landscapes. So like all countries in the world, Uganda is affected enormously by climate change. And because of that, we are experiencing periods of prolonged droughts that are affecting crops adversely. But we also get flash floods in some countries. And more recently, we have one mountain that has been covered under snow for a long time. But we've now seen a recession in the glaciers due to rise in temperatures. And because of that, we've decided to take deliberate steps towards contribute to global efforts that address climate change. And so this is how our timeline to climate change response has been in the country. So like most of the countries, we actually signed the UNFCCC in 1992. And in 1997, we also signed the Kyoto Protocol. And in 2002, we submitted our first national communication. And in 2014, we submitted the second national communication. And shortly after signing the Paris Agreement, we also drafted a national climate change policy that established the focal point department that coordinates climate change mitigation in the country. And in 2018, we drafted the National Climate Change Bill, and in the same year submitted the first forest reference level emission report. In 2019, we submitted our first biannual update report, and as of 2021, we have a law on climate change in place, and we also submitted the third national communication. So this is how our institutional framework looks like with respect to climate change response. It's led by the government of Uganda. And of course, we have a standing committee on climate change, which does the oversight role. But the real coordination of the climate change adaptation and mitigation measures is by the Ministry of Water and Environment. And under that, we have the National Climate Change Project Management Units divided among the inventory, then adaptation, and socio-economic issues. And then down there, that's where you have the pool of experts. That's where I sit in the hierarchy. And when you look at the greenhouse gas inventory by sector and gas, we've compiled our inventory using Tier 1 because we lack disaggregated data and also lack national country-specific emission factors. We used IPCC 2006 guidelines and IPCC 2006 software. This is how our inventory looks like. It currently stands at 90,000 gigagrams of CO2 equivalent, but as you can see, that's as of inventory year 2015, but as you can see, the lion's share is taken by the AFOLU sector, accounting for over 86%, followed by energy at 10%, and waste and IPPU only represent a small fraction, that's about 4%. Now, if you break it down to contribution of gases, we see that CO2 is accounting for 64%, Then methane is accounting for 26%, and then N2O is accounting for 10%. And if you look at our emissions, and taking 1995 as a base year and 2015 as a reporting year, we see that the emissions have actually tripled. And that's because of what is happening in the AFOLU sector. If I can shed more light on this, we had about 6 million hectares of forest land in 1990. But as of today, we have only 2.8 million hectares left. So that represents about 50% reduction in the forest resources. And this is just to emphasize how important the AFOLU sector is to the greenhouse gas inventory of Uganda. So you see that the first 4 contributing categories are actually from the AFOLU sector. So what have we done? First we've come up with the nationally determined contribution that range between 22 to 24% as of 2030 compared to business as usual. And basically what you see in red, those are the total emissions excluding LULUCF. And green that is the net LULUCF impact. In 2000, we see that our LULUCF was an emitter. And then when we look at 2030, and if we continue on that trajectory, still LULUCF will still be an emitter, right? But if we factor in reductions in emissions based on like wetland restoration and enhancing renewable energy capacity, and also do some strategies in the LULUCF, we'll have a net reduction of about 22%. And all our climate change mitigation strategies are centered on 3 pillars. That is the NAMAs and the national policies and RED+, because all these ones are mostly targeting the AFOLU sector. And what are the challenges we are facing in developing the national greenhouse gas inventory? First, we are still stuck with tier 1 because we lack disaggregated data, like I already pointed out, and national country-specific emission factors. Secondly, we still lack capacity to archive data in a way that is compatible with, for instance, IPCC guidelines. We also have implementation constraints related to technical capacity. For instance, we've not done a comprehensive assessment of mitigation measures and mitigation measures in the country. And despite the fact that quite a lot of climate financing comes into the country, we still do not have a grasp or grip on how and how much, because some of the finance that comes into the country goes to the private sector, and they are not quite transparent about how much they receive. And the other important thing is to do with the memorandum of understanding. So in Uganda, cement production is mainly by the private sector. And since we've not finalized the memorandum of understanding, we cannot hold them accountable on like producing some data that we need. For instance, we know how much is produced in terms of cement, but we don't know how much clinker is produced in the process. And lastly, there is inadequate financial allocation. Why, as you may remember, the NDCs are tied to the contribution by Uganda. But when it comes to the national cake, climate change is really not a priority yet. And with that being said, thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, Joseph, for your timely presentation and for sharing so much details about Uganda. So yeah, we had quite an interesting panel, 6 very different countries from extremely large to small enough, from most of them sharing this is how our inventory looks like, which is quite impressive to see that so many countries are having a good understanding of what their emissions look like and a good understanding of the drivers and the circumstances behind those emissions. But before I use the privilege of sitting in this chair and putting some questions to the panelists, I would like to give you the opportunity to raise some questions to the panelists. So I wonder whether we already have questions submitted to the platform. Can I ask whether those are available? And if anyone is planning to submit a question to the platform using the QR code, which was shared in the beginning, please do it now so that we can have your question up on the screen as soon as possible. But while we try to figure that out, I'm wondering also among yourselves, is there any question that you would like to put to each other? Does anyone of you want to do that? Rumbi, please.
Thank you, Suva, for your presentation. I see that you mentioned that you are in the process of developing a climate change related law, and I just wanted to find out, are you aware what the status is? Is it still in the drafting phase? Where along the process is that?
Thank you, Rumbi. It's in the drafting phase, actually. We are looking for the fund, so it's in the drafting phase, actually, the preliminary phase, I can say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have one question there. I wonder whether we have a microphone that could be given to the gentleman. Is there a mic that can be? Can you please stand up so that they see where the microphone is needed? There you go. So please introduce yourself, and then if the question is to one of the speakers, please indicate which speaker you would like to address.
Okay. Thank you very much for these wonderful presentations that we had. My name is Ali Rashid Hamad. I'm an Incheon National University PhD student pursuing my PhD in response to climate change. My question is that we all know that the aim of this GHG inventory is to reduce emission. But sometimes we forget that everybody should be included in that process. What I wonder is that how well do we engage stakeholders, including industry operators, land and forest users, in order to understand the process and progress of emission, so that we can plan together with them on how to reduce this emission. Because sometimes we just plan, we do science, and then we propose things and put them down for them to implement. But sometimes other things that we propose are not working in reality. So we have to make sure that we engage these stakeholders in order to go together with them and be able to achieve the goal and aim that we intend to do. So I would like to ask the panel members, how well are they engaged the stakeholders in order to achieve the aim and goal that we are intending to achieve? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I don't know whether one of you wants to volunteer. I can see Forrest.
Hi, sorry, I didn't realize it was on. That's a wonderful question because it has its own dynamics as well. I'll give an example in Guyana. Apart from stakeholders, meetings, and engagement, the institutions created an internal MRV system, monitor, reporting, and valuation. Whereas every institution that has anything to do with any sort of emissions, monitor, report, and try to verify that. So the engagement process is very, very critical because with that MRV system, you now have to engage these stakeholders, let them understand what you're doing, let them understand the challenges that the country itself is facing and what your intentions are. And that is something that it doesn't take today or tomorrow. It's a continuous effort because the dynamics keeps growing and changing, and you have to change with that as well. The issue that we have with that system is the V. And I think every country, even if they implement it, they will have a problem with that verification process. Because you may monitor, you may report, you may have the understanding of stakeholders, but the verification process will be very, very difficult. So my thing is, you have to engage, and engage continuously, change with changing times.
Thank you. I'm going to follow up on your very interesting question to Mel, please. Evelyn, sorry.
I would like to answer the question as well. So yeah, in terms of like experience in Papua New Guinea, when we are like trying to draft a policy or regulation, what we do is we have our regional consultations and our provincial consultations where we gather all our village people and we send invitation to like everyone to involve in the process, so they're actually part of the whole process. So they know that what's going on and what's actually in our policies and our strategies. So at the end of the day, it can take like a year or two until they all like agree to what's in the document and then we publish it. So that's how we do it back in my country.
Rumbi, I would like to follow up on this one, asking you, you've presented your portal where I guess some of these stakeholders will submit information to your greenhouse gas inventory, and then you also refer to this public commenting process as part of this quality assurance, which is somehow the V that Forrest was just referring to. Would you like to describe how the process works and how you get stakeholders in the absence of a Climate Change Act to submit their information, and then what is the relevance of the commenting process in verifying this information?
Okay, Althea, thank you for the follow-up. So I think we have a very involved industry in South Africa. They like to be heard, so we can never run away from not involving them. Which is a good thing. So with the SAGES and the reporting regulation, that is mainly for industry. So that would help in terms of like some energy data and some IPPU data. But for the other sectors, not so much. But as Papua New Guinea mentioned, we have a similar system as well, that whenever you are wanting to promulgate a law, you have to go around the entire country and host workshops where you're letting them know what the policy is about, what the regulations are about, what that means. And so for us, it actually takes a very long time. I mean, one of the reasons we still don't have a Climate Change Act, even though the process probably started, I think, like 2010, if not earlier, is because of that lengthy stakeholder engagement process. And then with regard to the public commenting, what we typically do is with our draft NIR, we just publish that and then we give the public 30 days to submit whatever comments they have. And so whether it's academic institutions or a typical person on the street, they then get to see the inventory before we finalize and publish it, and whatever questions, and we do get a lot of feedback on why did you use this data and not that, so that does help with quality assurance as well. But I think on top of that, we do then have the independent verification as well, where a third party does come to really scrutinize the inventory before we publish it. But yeah, I think we involve a lot of the industry stakeholders. We are always having meetings with them. They take a long time, but I think it's necessary, it's required to make sure that everyone's on the same page with regards to climate change and what we need to do to mitigate emissions. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. In this same follow-up, Joseph, you mentioned that you're having some hard time having this memorandum of understanding signed with the cement industry to collect their data, while Rumba was just saying that her private sector very much wants to be heard, and so I would assume that people in South Africa would very much be willing and eager to sign this MOU, but you're facing this hard time. So in the absence of this MOU, how are you being able to engage key stakeholders in the preparation of your inventory?
Yes, thank you so much for that question. In my view, stakeholder engagement is a continuous process, and we should not give up on engaging stakeholders, because these are key players when it comes to, like, for instance, the cement industry in Uganda is dominated by the private sector. So you have, or we have as a country, to continue engaging these stakeholders. But the point I wanted to make is that it has to be timely engagement. So you need to give people enough time to process whatever that you're putting on table, so that they are able to, base on that and make a decision. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. So we have two questions from the floor, the gentleman over there, and then the lady in this table. Could you please Okay, we're starting with the lady in the table. Can you please introduce yourself?
Okay. Thank you very much for giving me the floor. I'm Binka Mary Ann, a student from International University. And my question is going directly to the presenter from South Africa. And please, madam, you mentioned something regarding quality control for GSG inventory. And I wish to know if there are some norms that you've put together. If you go, for instance, to follow up, or you send maybe some inspectors to go maybe to your cement company, what are those things that you check that if the cement company doesn't follow, they have to pay a tax, or is there any tax attributed in case of failure to comply to your norms? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. For the quality assurance, that's mainly for the data that we receive for the inventory. And what we have for that is the GHG emissions verification program. So what we've set up, and this is something that we started implementing this year actually, so it's the first time that we're implementing this. So we've allowed independent companies within industry, right, who have the certain level of competence to be able to go to companies and verify emissions. And they do that in accordance with the SANAS 14,065 accreditation. Yes, yeah. So with that, that's mainly to just verify the data that they send to us for the inventory. So now, the people that pay carbon tax, what happens is National Treasury piggybacks on our regulations. So when we approve a greenhouse gas emissions report, when they then file their tax return, they basically need that letter that states that we've approved their emissions. So there isn't the only punitive measure there is paying for the emissions you've emitted. There isn't, for the pollution prevention plans, because those don't have an overarching climate change law, they don't really have like punitive measures for not meeting your pollution prevention plan. All you need to do is tell us what you're going to do to meet it. So if you deviate, you just need to report on how you're going to go back according to the plan. That's how it currently works. Okay. I hope I answered your question. Okay.
Thank you very much. The gentleman in the middle. The mic is coming your way.
My name is Asim Samadov. I am also a PhD student in International University. I work as a GHG emission inventory expert in my country also. And my question is a follow-up question from my friend Ali. For the stakeholder engagement, I know I have some sense about in my country also. It's quite hard to engage the stakeholders from different sectors such as industry. But I want to understand and listen to the view of our experts about the carbon trade system, because with this system, okay, right now for industry, engage for mitigation action is not profitable. Yeah, it has environmental sense, but for them, for companies, they are thinking mainly about profit, how they are getting profit. And with this carbon trading system, we can create opportunities for them. By the way, they will engage to mitigation action at the same time they can make money with trading system. Thank you so much, and I want to see the views.
Thank you. May I ask, what is your country? If you
Azerbaijan.
Azerbaijan, very well. Maybe, Pradeep, do you want to comment on this, whether any cap and trade or any carbon trading mechanism is supporting in setting up the greenhouse gas inventory in providing information for the system? What is your experience in India? You have some mechanisms to engage private sector in emissions reductions or intensity reductions, right?
Yeah, of course. In India, we have that type of practice by adapting such type of carbon trading systems to involving the private sectors as well as the government sectors. But technically, when we start to talk about the reduction, yes, of course, as he said like that, we still have the, correlate the technology as well as the profitable thing to the private sectors is still lacking, and we are actually working on that. And the technology transformation in the industrial process as well as in any sector is actually have to be to move towards a sustainable thing, as well as it has to encompass the carbon trading, as well as it directly implement the profitable things to the private sector. But however, we are working on that. That's the thing that I could able to present now.
And sometimes private sector does have to do a couple of things which is not necessarily profitable.
Yes.
For the common good. Thank you. We have about 4 minutes left, and before giving the floor back to you, and if you have any questions, please do raise it. I see one hand there. But before I give you the floor, I'm going to ask you, Subarna, you mentioned that that Bangladesh, in the sector land converted to forest land, you saw a big increase in the carbon sink. Yes. Are there any specific policies addressing this situation? Is this the result of a specific national policy to increase the carbon sink in the forestry sector?
Actually, thank you for the question. First of all, actually, we do have Forest Act, and that is the main reason that we are we are giving more emphasis on our forestry sector. But yet, you see, we are a very populated country, so deforestation is a very big factor in our country. But still, we are managing to enact our Forestry Act. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The lady in the table here, can you please stand up so that the mic can go your way?
All right, thank you. My name is Adeumi Ogunride. I'm a master's degree student, also from International University. I have 2 questions, please. Thank you all for your presentation. To the speaker from South Africa, you mentioned about Carbon Tax Act, and it seems to be like a working initiative. So I want to know, especially in terms of the level of compliance, how are you managing it, in terms of compliance? Are people really, cooperating and all that? So that's one. Then to the speaker from Uganda, in one of your slides, you talked about INDC, intended nationally determined contributions. So, and I believe like so many countries have moved from that to nationally determined. So I don't know, maybe you should just throw more light. Are you still working with INDC? If yes, then why? I just want to know. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Rumbi.
Thank you so much for the question. So the Carbon Tax Act is the responsibility of National Treasury. And so as DFFE, the national focal point, we house the reporting regulations. So the interesting thing that actually happened is because National Treasury used the same thresholds for eligibility as our reporting program, that actually helped us more than it did them. So because carbon tax, is a lot scarier, you have to pay, you want to be in compliance, that actually helped us get more people to report on the system that didn't know about our regulations. So in terms of the carbon tax, I think National Treasury in general has a good hold on making sure people pay, because National Treasury everywhere, I think, will always find you. You can't run away from National Treasury. So I think they have a good grip on compliance on their end, but the actually positive effect that we've seen is that it's helped us get more data providers into our system. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Joseph, do you want to comment on your INDC or NDC?
Yes, thanks a lot for the question. Actually, the INDC was just to show how the journey has been like. But the NDC that I put up there is actually the actual one. We are not using the indicative NDC.
Okay. Thank you very much. We just ran out of time, but I do have one final question from my side, and I did promise to pick your brain first on why Guyana hasn't submitted a BOR. given that you presented such a detailed overview of your greenhouse gas emissions, and we are a year and a half away from submitting the BTRs that we are all looking forward to. So what is holding Guyana in submitting such nice information to the UNFCCC?
Thank you for that question. That's a very huge question. I don't want to commit myself much. But yeah, we have had a wonderful time with the INDC and the NDC currently, and we have submitted a well-detailed document. Until now, we have not done anything with the BURs or the BTRs. A good reason, one, capacity. Capacity is a problem with Guyana in terms of doing that. Even when we did the NDCs and the GHGI, it is through what you call consultants, and not national consultants, international consultants, along with some national consultants, but none from the actual ministry or government. And that's an issue. So we are trying much right now to garner, one, finance, two, the capacity to build that document. I am quite unsure as to say where we are currently with the BURs, so I'll just leave it at that.
Okay, thank you very much. And you're not alone. There are many countries that are still struggling to submit their first BUR. And even a country which has submitted 2 or 3 BURs will always struggle, because it is indeed such a huge task that we have all committed as countries to engage on every 2 years, or every year in case of developed countries that submit their greenhouse gas inventories annually for a few years now. So I would like to thank you very much for sharing your knowledge and your experiences and giving us a brief overview of what your country looks like in terms of greenhouse gas emissions inventory, but also taking a look into the key climate policies, both in terms of mitigation and adaptation, considering the vulnerability of your countries to the key climate change impacts that you already experience. We have heard from all of you that there are challenges that you must address. And again, from humongous India to smaller Guyana, these are challenges that all countries face, regardless of their size and regardless of the capacity that they currently have. The one thing that the enhanced transparency framework under the Paris Agreement is bringing is an extreme clarity on this notion that each country should be engaging with the others based on their capacity. And so this is why I left the question to you for last, because indeed the Paris Agreement brings this notion of continuous improvement, giving us confidence that we don't have to wait indefinitely for our report to be perfect, because we are all working on this notion that we do one, we submit it on time because it's necessary for processes like the global stock take that we are discussing this afternoon. And then once we submit it, next day, we don't stop working on it. We just open the new version of this document and continue working on it in this notion of continuous improvement, hoping that we have learned something from the process of preparing the previous version, and also benefiting from the verification process under the Paris Agreement, in which each report is submitted to technical expert review, which provides always very insightful guidance and recommendations in terms of how the reporting and the monitoring and the verification of the documents can improve from one version to the other. I would also like to thank you in the audience for such active participation and for such important questions, ranging from how do you engage stakeholders to are you sure you are still working on your INDC? Because if you are too late. So thank you very much for engaging with our panelists, and I'm sure we'll see you in the afternoon. So we close this side event. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much for the heated presentation and conversation.